and John Kerry and George Bush Jr. and John Kerry and scores of senators and congressmen.
So,
and the funniest thing is, in this last presidential cycle, in interviews, both George Bush and John Kerry were asked, could you tell, by an interviewer, could you tell us something about this organization you belong to, Bones? And both of them gave the identically same answer. It's a secret. I can't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, so there you are. And this is why I say the elections are a total farce. If you have two guys belonging to a secret organization, the media is either afraid or so complicit that they don't really press the issue, and the guy just says it's a secret. I'm not going to tell you. Does that sound right? I mean, Gianni, what do you think?
Well, what about the people such as the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Habsburgs, the Warburgs? Are they not all part of that? The family?
Yes. Yeah. In the first book that I wrote that dealt with the sort of a conspiracy issue is unfortunately out of print. It was called The Satori and the New Mandarins. The Satori being the hidden group behind, issues, and the Mandarins, of course, being the same thing as they are in China, the sort of the bureaucrats that run things for them. And in that book, I list 3,400 of these people internationally who are members of other organizations like the Bilderbergs, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission. By the way, the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations were both started by Illuminists.
Mm-hmm.
And of course the Bilderbergers, and we have this whole cabal of these organizations that may initially have had a different purpose or a different plan, but have been taken over by this chameleon sort of organization called the Illuminati, who now run the leaderships in all of these organizations, all the way down to the Bohemian Club in San Francisco.
All right, let's talk about, again, listeners, it's toll-free, and we're talking to Dr. Krieg. It's 1-800-433-1429, phone bridge 712-580-1100, punch in 97524. Adrian, let's talk about these secret societies for a minute, because it seems like the path that we're on, totalitarianism, communism, socialism, is certainly coming from the elite, and as we've just discussed, that these are supposedly the Illuminati. Now, is there a hierarchy of secret societies?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to say. I would think, the same sort of people and names keep popping up perpetually. You go to the World Economic Forum and you look who attended it, and you go to a Bilderberger meeting and who attended it, and you go to a CFR conference and who attended it, and then you compare these names to the boards of directors of the major corporations and banks in the world, and you keep coming up with the same names over and over and over again. So obviously there is some binding, organizational structure. And I don't think anyone has ever gotten far enough into the Illuminist organizations to be able to really go in detail in how this functions. Bones has a meeting once a year up in the Thousand Lakes area of New York on a place called Deer Island. Mm-hmm. And they have between 600 and 900 people who go to this meeting annually. And interestingly, some of the most powerful people in our government go to this meeting. The very fact, how they organize these things, it's a conspiracy. When the World Economic Forum meets in Davos, they get the Swiss military to prevent, they stop rail traffic into Davos, and you can't drive into Davos, and you can't walk into it. It's on a plateau. It's very difficult to get to. So by cutting out the rail traffic, they keep the protester. They block the protesters in Zurich, you know, where they get really angry and riot because they're not allowed to go and protest this. The Bilderbergers meeting Bilderbergers had a meeting recently in Sweden near Gothenburg, and they held a meeting on an island, and the Swedish army put concertina barbed wire fences across the bridge that went there and put big steel posts. You couldn't drive over them, and kept everybody off the island. So these people not only are extremely wealthy, but they very obviously control the police forces in most of these countries. And, you know, the same thing can be said here. In the last presidential cycle, there was a debate in Boston. And I happened to have lived in New Hampshire at the time, and a number of my friends went down to Boston. They wanted to protest because they were I think some of them were for the Libertarian candidate and some were for the Constitution and America First parties, and they were all excluded, of course, from the debates. And they went down to Boston, and the Boston police kept 14,000 demonstrators 3 miles away from the place where the debate was, behind fences, wouldn't let them, you know, they wouldn't let them protest, wouldn't let them. Is that a republic? Is that a democracy? What kind of a country is that does that? In St. Louis, they arrested and handcuffed the Libertarian candidate and the Green Party candidate. Arrested them, handcuffed them, took them to the police station, didn't charge them, held them until the debate was over, and then let them go. What kind of a country does things like that? I mean, this is Stalinist America? This is terrible.
It is Stalinist America.
Yeah. And so, you know, Gianni, what can you say? You know, I hear some music.
We all know that the intent of the power elite, meaning the Illuminati, the Skull and Bones, the secret societies that work in conjunction to bring down countries to what they want: communism, socialism, totalitarianism, fascism. Why? I mean, Marx proved that communism doesn't work anyway. So why would they
that's exactly why. The plan, which people really don't understand, is not to make us a communist or a socialist society. The plan is to make it that because they know it will fail. And when it fails, people will be destitute, they will be hungry, they will be miserable, and they will accept at that point anybody who says he's going to be their savior. You know, if you look at it from a Christian perspective, it's quite relevant to revelations, isn't it? I mean,
absolutely. I mean, that's the whole thing.
Yes.
I often say, is biblical prophecy being fulfilled naturally, or are the elite doing it deliberately so that we will fall into a trap?
Yeah, well, you know, in my estimation, and you know, I'm certainly not a biblical scholar, but in my estimation, when you read the last chapter in the Bible, you get a very good glimpse of what will take place. And when you look at how these people organize things, you know, the French Revolution, the Russian revolutions, the two worst bloodbaths in the history of the world, you know, we have to remember things. And unfortunately, people have very short memories. More people have been killed by their own governments than in any war in the history of this world. Stalin killed 66 million people. He was directly responsible for killing 66 million. Mao probably killed 100 million. Mm-hmm. In the French Revolution, when the populations were much smaller, there were certainly well over 1 million killed. So you see, all of this, when you think about it, all of these systems like a big jigsaw puzzle with little pieces that fit together. The environmentalists tell us we must reduce the population of the world to 1 billion. There's so many things pointing in that direction. You know, the birth rates in Western Europe and in America are at a negative level. We have these perpetual epidemics. We have AIDS, which was created in a government lab. And so, there's a movement afoot that's doing this, and I believe that this movement is the Illuminists, and that sooner or later, unless we all wake up, they're going to succeed in America. And I mean, it's a horrible thought. This country was founded as a republic, and if people, just simply understood what the difference between a republic and a democracy is. In a republic, there is an established basis in law for government and interaction between people. And that basis of law in our republic was the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. In a democracy, law is based on majority rule. So if the majority decides euthanasia is fine, well, then it's fine. If the majority decides that it's okay to kill your wife, but only on Thursday morning, then you can kill your wife on Thursday morning. That's a horrible form of governance, absolutely awful. Yet our children in schools are perpetually taught that they live in a democracy. They do not live in a democracy, and this country was never intended to be a democracy.
It's a republic.
It's a republic. And now, today, it's an empire.
Right.
So and what happens to empires? They collapse. They always collapse. You could go back to Babylon, you can go to Rome, you can go to Greece. Any empire that ever existed, the Mayan Empire, the Aztec Empire, the Toltec Empire, doesn't make any difference what continent, what place, the Chinese Empire, the Mongol Empire, every one of them collapsed. And our empire is going to collapse, and it's going to collapse sooner than later.
How soon, you think?
Not long. Not very long, because I think I just finished a new book called Money a Primer, and it just came out last week. And monetarily, we're totally bankrupt. We have the largest debt in world history. We have the largest debt in the world. Our banking industry is, how do you say that, kaput.
Yep.
That's the best word for it. And the Illuminists are running the entire banking operation. Nobody can dispute that, because all you have to do is go to the bonesman and see how many of them running which bank. You've got Chase Manhattan, First Boston, Harriman Brothers banks. They're all run by the same group of people.
Okay, let's go back and look at this now. We're both in agreement of what is going on in the fact that we are becoming a socialistic, again, totalitarianist, fascist, Fabianist, country. When they get us down to that level, I mean, we are just about there. And you say their purpose is to do that so that they can step in and then just totally consume our life. Well, aren't we already enslaved to them? I mean, how much more do they want us to be enslaved?
Listen. Let me tell you a story, Gianni. You'll love this. When I was a boy, I had an aunt, and this aunt was immensely wealthy. And after the war, I immigrated to America, and I was eventually drafted into the American military. And I was sent to Germany, and so when I went on leave, obviously I went to see my aunt in Switzerland because she essentially kept me alive during the war. And Aunt Bertie was a wonderful woman. And she said to me, you don't have any clothes. All you have is these uniforms and these sports. This is no good. We're going shopping. So she took me down to Zurich to some of the best